Okay, I was gonna start with the theme song. I was gonna learn it on the piano, but I tried and no one wants to hear that, so I'll just start reviewing Severance Season 2. Before I start, I'll say that I'm not as into TV as I am into movies, just because they're really long, and why would I watch a whole series when I could watch, like, 12 movies that I haven't seen yet? But I still do like to try to keep up with what's going on in TV today, especially as the lines between film and television have started to blur. And one thing I've really liked doing is talking about or thinking about what the best show on TV is at any given point. Because TV is very volatile, especially as shows have started to shorten while they're on streaming. Some shows will start to dip in quality, some shows will like shockingly get better a couple seasons in and really hit their stride. Shows abruptly end, some like huge breakouts come out every year or so, and it's just really fun to talk about what is the best one and sort of like what is about to take the crown and what currently has the crown and all of that. And for a while, I think it was pretty unmistakable that Succession was the best show on TV, at least for a couple of years. But then that show ended, I believe, 2 years ago. And ever since then, I've kind of been trying to look for that new best show on TV. For a moment, it was The Bear because I think season 2 was really, really great. But season 3 had a pretty significant dip in quality that I think made me look around for what else might be contenders. I think Nathan Fielder's The Curse is really good, but that's more of a mini series and not really a show. I don't think we're gonna get a season 2 of that. I think You Should Leave is great, but it feels weird saying that a sketch comedy show is the best show on TV right now. I think Abbott Elementary was pretty funny for the first season or two, but I think it's lost its charm at this point. And I don't watch White Lotus or Shogun or Hacks, which I think are shows that a lot of people are considering to be some of the best on TV right now. So my option, I guess, was probably Last of Us, but even then it's only been one season, so I don't really know if that's necessarily the best show on television. So for the past several months, I've kind of been looking around for what could be the next best show on TV, and I haven't really been able to find it until Severance Season 2 came out. And I did enjoy the first season of Severance. I think the dystopian world is really great. The world building is really fantastic. I think its dystopian concept allowed it to dive into a lot of really interesting ideas, specifically this like moral and philosophical quandary around the innies and the outies and whether or not they're like one single consciousness or they're two different souls sharing the same body or like they're two different sides of the same coin. And the show is doing a really great job of diving into that, and I'll get into it, but I think season 2 does an even better job of really getting into those questions. It's got this like weird sterile clinical visual style that I think is going to go on to influence a lot of dystopian filmmaking and show making in the coming years. A weird like mix of analog kind of past technology and more futuristic looking technology just gives it this weird sense of being outside of time as well as outside of place, because like this world that they live in is just this weird gray sky, cold, nameless place that is just, it feels like it exists outside of our own world. But I think that season 2 is a considerable improvement on the first season, mainly because season 2 is very much building up on the momentum of the first season, which ended in this really, really great cliffhanger. And season 2 is also diving headfirst into the different ways that these innies and outies communicate with each other and relate to each other. All 4 of like the primary characters are having odd relationships with their dual identities in season 2, and all of them are kind of showing different perspectives of what this innie-outie relationship looks like. Part of that is because the lines have been blurred between the innies and the outies now that in the season 1 finale the innies got to like see the way that their outies lived, and that just leads to a very complicated dynamic between these 2 different entities. Season 2 also provides a lot of necessary backstory for a lot of characters that were in season 1 and were really interesting, but didn't necessarily like have a lot of deep characterization. And even though season 2 is very much a slow burn, just like season 1 was, I really did love getting to spend time with some of those characters who were more mysterious and hard to reach in the first season. But that slow burn pace of season 2 does lead to a bit of a weird lull, especially in like the middle section. I think I had a hard time figuring out where this season was going, especially because there's a lot of mysteries and strange occurrences within Severance that are never really fully explained. And there's still so much we don't really know about this world. It feels like it's growing in scale, and it's just getting more and more confusing as it goes on. But the finale did really give us a surprising amount of answers to a lot of the questions that the show has been presenting in its first two seasons. I guess that leads me directly into the finale, which I think is absolutely incredible. It's directed by Ben Stiller, who serves as an executive producer and directs a lot of the significant episodes of Severance, and I'm really surprised that he has this kind of directing in him. Obviously, he's directed before, but it's mainly been like over the top, absurd comedies like Tropic Thunder and Zoolander. But, and I don't want to like discredit the great work that Stiller has done in his career previously. I do think that specifically this season finale is like the best thing that Ben Stiller has ever done in front of or behind the camera in his entire career. Direction wise, Stiller does a really great job of like differentiating the finale from the rest of the show. It's a lot like darker and more emotive with its lighting and its visuals, and then you get into like this huge third act which kind of grows in scale more than the rest of the show really has, and has like this huge marching band set piece thing going on and this huge hallway fight. There's like a lot going on in a show that is typically very restrained, and Stiller does a great job of making this feel like a continuation of what has been going on in the rest of the season, as well as like a huge climactic finale to all of that. Part of the finale's payoff isn't just like big reveals and big character moments, but also Severance is kind of answering some of the philosophical questions that it's been posing to the audience in its first couple of seasons. And I think there's two main ones. The first one is, can like one being be split in half into two separate consciousnesses? And if so, can these two separate consciousnesses survive and kind of like peacefully coexist together in the same body? And the finale's events, which I'm about to spoil, seem to insinuate that yes, these are two completely separate beings, but no, they are not really capable of peacefully coexisting, at least in like the current state that they're in. Because in the finale, there's two instances where the innies and outies of characters are communicating with each other, and in both situations, the outies come off as like very dismissive and manipulative of the innies, and the innies come off as very defensive and sort of sick of the way that they've been treated. You have one instance where Dylan's innie is receiving a letter from his outie, and the outie is basically telling him, I know you don't really like it there, but could you stay because I like when you're in there, essentially. Which again just comes off as very like self-centered of the outie. And then I think you have what is the most fascinating scene in the entire show so far, which is Mark, the central character played by Adam Scott, having a conversation between his innie and his outie, by like recording his responses and then watching them as the other person and stuff like that. And it begins as like this very civil conversation before eventually like diluting into this very heated debate, and it becomes very clear that the innie wants very different things from the outie, which leads directly into like the big cliffhanger of this season, which is the choice that Mark's innie makes. And I won't get all the way into that, but I will say that Adam Scott's performance, specifically in this scene where he's having a conversation, you know, with two different versions of himself, is really incredible. He does a great job of communicating like these two distinct identities of this innie and this outie, but is also like sharing similar mannerisms with both of them in a way that makes it feel like they are linked together, but they are also like slowly drifting away and becoming two completely different people. And he does this very subtly. Whenever he's his outie, he's like very weathered and cynical, and he kind of holds himself in this very insecure way. And there's like a lot of, I don't know, grief behind his eyes. But then whenever he's his innie, seems like generally a little bit happier, and then also like his eyes feel like they don't really have much behind them because his innie is like so much more naive and so much less knowledgeable about the way the world works because he's been living in an office his entire life. But then as the innie starts to get sucked into the Outies world and sucked into this mystery, he starts to gain a little bit more like weathered, rugged look to him, as if he is already getting like bogged down by the tragedy that his Audi has experienced and is sort of starting to translate into his own mannerisms. I don't know. It's very subtle and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I just think he does a great job of separating these two and slowly like making them feel as if they are separating from each other, but also like growing more aware of how the other one thinks and feels. It's a really complicated dynamic that he pulls off incredibly well. The other performance I want to mention is Tremel Tillman, who plays Mr. Milchick, and is the character we've really gotten the least backstory on. We've only really seen him in The Office for the most part. And this is where I think Severance's humor starts to shine in Tillman's performance, because Severance is partly about these blurred lines between a corporation and a cult, and like how into your job are you until you're like worshiping it. And the show communicates it through its writing by like having these really absurd, odd rewards and punishments and things that Milchick inflicts on the like MDR people that feel very serious and are taken very seriously by Tillman, by the way he's like reading the lines, but are just really, really funny. I think Severance is partially about the blurred lines between a corporation and a cult, and Milchick serves as a great example of a character who in season 2 is slowly starting to realize which category Lumen falls into, which leads to a much more nuanced Tillman performance in season 2, but I don't even think that's the best part of his performance. I think the best part is that he's just so funny. I think Tillman is clearly having a lot of fun playing this really strange character. The way he acts is just so off-putting and weird and like so plastic that it just is like, it comes off as almost borderline surreal in some instances. Season 2 pushes him into a more significant role. He's sort of acting as like this middle ground between the rebellion of MDR and like the concern and the vitriol of Lumen's higher-ups. And that's really unlocked a completely new aspect to his character. The finale leaves him in a weird spot where he's kind of caught in the middle of these two worlds. And I'm very interested to see what they're going to do with this character in season 3, because I think it's kind of pushing him to pick a side. And he's clearly built up a lot of resentment towards Lumen, but he also seems to kind of hate the innies, and the fact that it's pushing him to make a decision is going to make whatever happens in season 3 really interesting for his character. The other thing I really like about Severance is just how unpredictable and strange it is. Every question that it answers just really like leads to way more questions about what the hell is going on and how this world works. It reminds me a little bit of Lost in that sense, which is one of my favorite shows ever. But unlike Lost, I think that Severance has a plan on how to follow up on all of these questions, and I cannot wait to see till we get like the overarching answers as to what Lumen is up to and like why this is happening. And sometimes that confusion makes Severance a little hard to emotionally connect to, but I think that the performances and the show's emphasis on building characters up really helps that like distancing nature of the mystery kind of dissipate. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the performances. The cast here is really great, and they're all given like some of their best performances in their entire career. John Totoro is fantastic in the show. Adam Scott, I think, works really well at the show's core. Patricia Arquette is doing like this very odd, restrained thing, but then she'll like randomly explode into fits of anger, and I just absolutely love what she's doing here. And then, like I said, I think Tillman is a standout. He's hilarious, but he also is like hiding a lot of nuances and complexities to his character that I hope the show is going to be able to unlock in the next couple of seasons. That's really all I want to say And back to the beginning, I don't necessarily know if Severance is the best show on TV. Again, it is so unpredictable that I could see this flying off the rails and jumping the shark in season 3, but I could also see it like only solidifying its role as one of the most interesting shows in all of television. But I will say that this is definitely the most obsessed I've been with this show since Succession, and I just can't wait to see what the hell happens next. I hope that the next season doesn't take 3 or 4 years like this one did, because I don't think I could wait that long. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I'm not gonna rate it because it's not a movie and I don't know how to rate shows, so I'll just say it's really great and check it out. That's it. Goodbye.